Barada. Good morning. Good morning, Pilates chums. I'm wiping the sleep from my eyes on this Monday morning. Hope you're feeling well. Hope you're okay. Hope you've had a decent enough weekend. It was a bit grey, wasn't it? But glimpses of sunshine, and I always get this. The 1st of February always feels like spring's coming. So happy 1st of February, everybody. And I'm really looking forward to this Pilates session today. Really nice mix because this is gentle Pilates. There does tend to be, quite a lot of repetitive movements, and the basics are always the same. So the basics being, we've got a lot of core strength. And what I mean by core strength are the muscles, the really deep muscles in the trunk that are designed to stabilize the spine, the pelvis, and the shoulders. So it's all about core stability, core strength. There's some flexibility, there's lovely mobilizing movements. So the first half of our session is going to be just a slightly gentler version, and then there'll be a second part, a little bit more challenging, but it's all designed for the older adult in mind. So if you're feeling well, if you're feeling okay, welcome. If you're not feeling well, particularly if you've got a fever or you're in a lot of pain from a recent injury, just go easy today. Just take it easy. If you've got a fever, today is not your day. If you've got an injury, particularly if it's recent, it may not be your day either. Now, what are you going to need? Now, I've got my mat on the floor. You can only just see it. As I said last week, dog on blanket optional, but if you've got one, get them in now. That's a joke, by the way. I know, I do it every week. But we've got a towel, and this is particularly important, not necessarily the towel, but maybe just something. So it might be a pillow, some clothing. But when we're lying on our front, just to avoid that sort of type of thing happening, or when we're on our back, that type of thing, because we can't quite align the neck, this is going to be really useful to place under the forehead or the back of the head. Also on the side, you may want to put that here. So the towel or something to support your head and neck, really useful. I've got a resistance band. I'm going to try and remember to use it, but let's face facts, I don't always. So if you haven't got one of those, you can use your towel as well, or just no equipment at all. I'm very keen that our home program just uses the basics. So if you're feeling good, I've got a drink as well. But again, if you prefer to drink at the end of the session, you should probably not too far away from your kitchen, but do make sure you stay hydrated, my friends. So we're going to just take these feet, and we're going to take them about hip width apart, and we're going to start to think about bringing ourselves into our body. So Pilates is a very mindful activity, and I'll give you lots of analogies, lots of visualizations to try and help you really activate those very deep muscles, because we can't always see the action itself. So we have to really think about it. So I'm going to get you to bring yourself into your feet, first of all. Feel those feet on the floor. And just take that weight from the ball of the foot to the heel. So it's almost a sense of just slightly forwards and backwards. And we're going to take that movement forwards, backwards, ball of the foot to the heel, until we find a midpoint where your weight feels centered. And once you feel centered, we're going to just imagine this helium balloon attached to the crown of your head. And all of a sudden, that balloon is going to be let go and it's going to float upwards. And it's just going to start to gently lift the top of the head, just gently lift that spine. So you'll notice space opening up into each segment of the spine. And then we're going to notice how we normally stand. This is my normal stance. Notice that exaggerated curve, and I'm pushing my belly backwards. And it actually is making my back feel very sore. So what we're going to do is imagine that bucket of water in the pelvis, and we're going to just gently tip water out of the back of the bucket. Notice what happens to the lower back then. We're going to tip water out to the front of the bucket. Notice. And we're just going to make those tipping movements smaller and smaller, till we arrive at the midpoint where that weight or where the water is flat, and you find that you've got a natural curve at the base of the spine, but there's no exaggeration, okay? And we're going to try and come back to that neutral spine all the time. So once we've found that neutral spine, we're going to stand nice and tall. We're going to squeeze these shoulders up to the ears, and then we're just going to gently slide these shoulders down. Good. Good. We're just going to squeeze those shoulders up, and we're just going to gently slide those shoulders down. Good. So we're just allowing those shoulders to fall. Now on that squeeze up, we're going to breathe in through the nose. And then as we slide down, we're going to breathe out through the mouth. So there's just that breath in. So we're going to think about moving in time with our own breathing. Thinking about moving in time with our own breathing. So it's not in time with me, it's very much using your own breathing rhythms to control this movement. And then when those shoulders have fallen as far as you think they can fall, so those arms are almost floppy and weightless, we're just going to open out that chest, create that space between the ribs and the pelvis. Notice if it starts to shorten. But we're not going to use those tense shoulders to do that. We're going to allow those shoulders to soften, those shoulder blades to slide down your back. Now, we're going to think about that belt-like muscle. So we're going to tighten your belt that's around this lower abdominal area. It's quite a thick, wide belt. So we're going to tighten it by drawing that tummy button away from the hands, away from the waistband of your trousers, towards the spine. And we're going to tighten it all the way to notch 10. It's quite hard work. You'll feel like holding your breath. Try and breathe out and then release. So 10 is not sustainable. So now we're going to try and do it half as much to belt notch 5. And still, it's a little bit too much, not quite sustainable enough. Now we're going to loosen it off. This time we're going to tighten that belt to notch 3 or 4. We're just going to see if we can relax the shoulders, relax the breathing, and hold that belt. Now let's just see if we can just come into those side bends. We're going to gently lift that rib cage out to the pelvis and then come all the way back up. So I want you to take your awareness into your feet. So we've got both feet firmly on the floor, hip width apart. We want to take your awareness into that belt. So we're just lifting that chest gently and warming up the lower back. And I want you to imagine now that you're stood against a wall. So you've got your back to the wall and you can't lean backwards. And then I want you to imagine that you're stood with your nose touching the wall. And there's no leaning forwards. Can't move your head. And that is our side bend. Okay, good. So we're going to come all the way up. We're just going to take some shoulder circles now. You might feel at this point, your feet are quite static. So you might want to shake them out before coming back into that lovely long position again. We're going to take that breath in as we roll those shoulders up. And as we breathe out, think about sliding those shoulder blades down the back towards the bottom. And then we're going to tighten that belt. We're just going to think about floating those arms, just a shoulder level to get started. So we're tightening this belt. We've got that long spine, neutral spine, helium balloon, drawing that crown all the way up towards the sky. And we're moving from the shoulder, and as this arm comes to shoulder level, we're going to slide the shoulder blade down the back towards the bottom. Good. Now you might find you can take that arm float. The words Monday morning and words for me are not good, but we might find we can take it a little bit further. But what we want to avoid is that, or lifting that rib cage to get that arm out. Let's see if we can move this arm independently of the trunk. And this is what it's all about. It's all about challenging these core muscles. Let's change arms. Challenging these muscles here while the arms and legs are moving. So the more they move, the more it's going to challenge these core muscles to hold that trunk steady. Good. So we're going to breathe in. Now, we're going to hold that arm there. We're just going to lift that rib cage, get a nice little stretch, come back and down. Let's do the same on the other side. So we're breathing in, breathing out. Keep that belt active. So not 3 or 4 all the time. And bring it down. And then we're just going to lift those heels off the floor if you can. If you're struggling with that, you might want to hold on to something. And we're just going to warm up. Good. That's brilliant. So we're just going to breathe in as we lift. Breathe out as we come down. Good. So we're going to make this movement in time with your breathing. Good. Lovely. And then we're going to bring it down. We're going to think about just taking those little squat movements now, my friends. So those heels are firmly glued to the floor. We're just going to drop that bottom behind the heels, keeping that long back. So it's quite cool today. We're going to do 5 or 6 of these. Keep that knee in line with that second toe, not dropping too low. Just some nice full body warm up. And then we're just going to take those feet a little bit wider. Just be careful of that space around you. Notice I'm just allowing that opposite heel to move on the floor. Some of us will need to be a little bit careful with this one and just keep those movements to a minimum. And some of you will feel quite comfortable making that movement a little bit bigger. So this is our spine swing. And again, just loosening, sort of loosening up, losing some of that tension that sometimes builds when we get that alignment and that breathing and that centering movement. That's all part and process of the warm-up, because you think, oh, am I doing it right? I'm concentrating so hard that you start to become quite tense. So we're going to try and fulfill those principles without sort of tensing up because you're not sure if you're doing it right or not. So slide those shoulders away from the ears. Just find that neutral spine. Remember that bucket of water with that flat level. Now we're going to think about just taking a nice little prayer position. So slide those shoulder blades down the back. We're going to tighten that belt, and we're just going to take the most gentle movement as if you were the top half of that doll. So those hips are facing forwards. We've got those headlights on the hip bones. And as they shine on that wall in front of you, you're not moving the headlights at all. So the only thing that's moving is this top half of the body. The movement from here, it would look like this if we didn't have the hands there. And then we're going to come back. We're going to think about now just dropping that chin down towards the chest. And then we're going to lift that head. We're going to look straight ahead. Now, as you're doing this, we're going to keep those shoulders relaxed, almost sliding down that back towards the bottom. And again, we're just going to drop that chin to the chest. We're going to look back up. And then we're going to open these arms out. Just feel that lovely opening across the chest. Slide the shoulders away from the ears. And we're going to bring it back. So we're going to take a breath in. Relax those shoulders, lengthen through that neck. We're going to breathe out. Good. So this time is a little bit more flow. We're going to breathe in and we're going to breathe out. So we're looking out onto the horizon. Good. And then we're going to bring these arms down, and then we're going to take a breath in. We're going to take a breath out. Good. We're going to take a breath in. And we're going to take a breath out. And then we're going to just come back to that lovely neutral spine, long spine, out onto the horizon. We're going to start to bring ourselves down onto our mat. So I'm going to turn this way just so you can see from the side what happens. So we're going to avoid sticking our bottom out. Any issues with that lower back, you might want to bend the knees. And some of you may want to just bring yourself onto the mat without doing this. Maybe come into that 4-point kneeling position and practice some cat stretches. Because what we're going to do is we're going to tighten the belt, and imagine you've got that big beach ball at your feet. Now we're going to relax the shoulders, and with that belt tight, we're going to lift this chest as if we were rolling over the top of this imaginary beach ball. Now, when you get to this point, I want you to think about just letting the head go. So if someone was to push it, it's floppy. If I was to push your arms, they'd be floppy. We tend to do that. We tend to look up. So I want you to let that head go. So you're looking towards the thighs, and then we're just going to gradually lift that rib cage over that beach ball until you reach the point where you think, yep, my body's saying no more. Now tighten that belt, and we're going to push your heels down into the floor, and we're going to stack that spine one at a time all the way till the shoulders slide into place and you're looking forwards. We're going to breathe in, and we're going to do the same again. So as you breathe out, we're going to tighten the belt, let that head go, lift that rib cage over that imaginary beach ball. And you might find you can go a little bit further, you might not, but we're not pushing it. We're just breathing in at the bottom, tightening that belt again, stacking that spine one little segment at a time, starting with the lowest. And it's almost like creating a block, a building block line. Good. So we're just going to do 3 or 4 of these. So this is called our roll down. Good. It's a nice way of just starting to use that belt line muscle, warm up that spine. Lovely. But if this feels no good, just bring yourself down onto your mat and wait for the next. So with the next one, we're going to actually use it to bring ourselves onto the mat into a kneeling position. I'm going to move the position of my camera. And let's see where we're going. I'm hoping this is working for everyone. So I've managed to change. Now, hello. I'm going to use my roll down to take me so far, or I'm just going to bring myself onto the mat. So if we're rolling down, when we get to this position, we're just going to bend those knees, walk yourself out into that 4-point kneeling position. So remember from last week, hands directly under the shoulders, knees hip width apart, so nothing's too narrow. We want everything, knees underneath the hips, hands underneath the shoulders. Now, with this head and neck, we tend to, again, either do that or that. So we're going to really lengthen through these arms. So straighten out these arms, find that nice straight elbow joint. Then we're going to draw the shoulders away from the ears. So really slide those shoulder blades down the back towards the bottom. And then we're going to imagine that you're a sort of a dog and you've got a tail that's sticking straight out behind you. Okay, a sad dog, tail would be here. Happy dog, you're going to arch your back. So this dog is just, feeling all right with life. It's moderately okay. It's not ecstatically happy, but it's not sad. Now let's see if we can use that abdominal bracing, that tightening the belt. So draw that tummy button away from the mat. So we're just holding that 4-point kneeling position, and then we're going to release. And we're going to do the same again. So there's no movement in the body. All we're doing is practicing tightening that belt against gravity. And now see if you can do it in time with your breathing. So we're going to breathe in to prepare. And as you breathe out, draw that tummy button away from the mat. So imagine I've lit a campfire underneath your belly and you're drawing it away from the heat. Now, we're going to pretend you're a sad dog. So push that tail between your leg. We're going to come back into part of that child's pose position. So you're going to draw those elbows behind the knees. Relax there, relax the shoulders. And if that's not relaxing or comfortable for you, just find a pose that is sort of comfortable. You can relax those shoulders for a moment. Good. Now we're going to bring yourself back. We're going to walk these hands forwards again.
and we're going to come into that 4-point kneeling position. Now, practice that abdominal bracing. So draw those shoulders away from the ears. And now we're going to come into our cat stretch. So we're going to create that sad dog position as we breathe out, but we're also going to draw that spine towards the ceiling, look towards the knees. And then as you breathe in, come back to that start position. Good. Brace those abdominals. Breathe in to prepare. As you breathe out, draw that spine up towards the ceiling. Push that imaginary tail between your knees and come back. We're going to do another 4 of these if you can, guys. You can do more or you can do less. Just when you come back to that start position, just remember to look at that invisible line at the top of the fingertips. Draw those shoulders away from the ears. Straighten through the arms. Don't be frightened to change your position if you think you need to. Breathing out and breathing in. Just drawing those lower abdominals in. And when we've done as many as we feel comfortable, we're going to tilt that pelvis, push that tail between our legs. We're going to come back into that child's pose position. This time, if you feel comfortable, we're just going to gently slide those hands forwards. Stretch out the shoulders and the backs of those arms. Good. And we get a really nice stretch in the lower back as well. Okay. So we're just going to slide those elbows behind the knees. And we're going to bring those legs together. We're going to come just onto our backs. And we're just going to bring ourselves into that lying down position. So we want those feet hip width apart. I'm going to find my towel. I'm just going to place that towel just comfortably so I've got that nice long neck. That's not very comfortable. And we're going to take those feet hip width apart. Now again, just have a little play with that pelvis till you can find that neutral spine, okay, my friends? So with those feet at 12 o'clock, those knees hip width apart, we're going to relax those arms by your side. Let those shoulder blades melt into the mat. Now, tighten that belt. Let's practice those pelvic tilts just on our backs. So we're going to just push that imaginary tail between the knees. And as you do that, you'll notice that lower back just gently presses down towards the mat. And then we're going to come back to that neutral spine. So there's just a little bit of space there. Notice what happens if you tilt the pelvis the other way. And then, like we did with that bucket of water, you get quite a space. You can see my hand coming through there underneath the back. This is what we want to avoid when we're doing our abdominal work on our back. So if in doubt, make sure that lower back is closer to the mat. Now we're going to start with some bridging. Okay, so we're going to start with those little pelvic tilts. We're going to just get used to relaxing the shoulders, relaxing those shoulder blades, making those little pelvic tilts. Now, when you feel ready, we're going to breathe in to prepare. As you breathe out, tighten that belt, tilt that pelvis. Then we're going to squeeze these bottom muscles, press down into those heels, peel that spine away from the mat. Now at the top of that move, we're going to breathe in. We're going to look straight up to the ceiling. And as you breathe out, we're going to press each little segment one at a time, each vertebrae of that back down into the mat. Good. Back to the start position. Relax the shoulders. And we're going to start again. So breathe in, breathe out. And as you breathe out, tighten that belt. Tilt that pelvis. Squeeze that bottom and see if you can peel that spine away from the mat. It's a little bit like peeling a strip of sellotape away from a sort of surface. Just peeling it away. And at the top, we're going to breathe in, tighten that belt again. And then if you had paint on your back, just imagine trying to just make a line of dots all the way down that mat with the paint that's on your back. Good. So we're going to do about 8 of these, my friends. Again, if you can only do 1 or 2, that's fine. But I find generally it takes me 3, 4 or 5 to actually get to my full range. So, and then you can just really focus on looking up to the ceiling, keeping those. Sometimes imagine that I'm drawing my hip bones together, squeezing the bottom. Some common mistakes, but I think you tend to see this a lot in yoga, is that we sort of almost stop using the bottom and the backs of the legs and we start using the lower back. So if you find you're feeling it here, you might be doing this, you might be pushing into your ribs. So just see if you can lower those ribs, squeeze the bottom, find that neutral spine. And then we're going to come all the way down. Now, we're going to see if we can hold this position now. So some of you may need to just leave your arms on the floor, okay, because you need that support. You might need a bit more support here. Keep squeezing this bottom. Knees should be pointing up to the ceiling. And if we can, we're going to float those arms so those palms are facing each other. We're going to breathe in, and as we breathe out, we're just going to make some circles over the head and round. So just make those circles small to start off with. We're just challenging your core muscles. We're challenging your muscles to hold this, but we're getting some lovely mobilizing on the shoulders. Oops, I've just knocked my water over. If you haven't got enough range, just take the arms over the head and back. Okay, so we're going to do one more circle, and you might notice that your bottom muscles, your leg muscles, they might start to shake in that static position, which means they're working hard, but you might need to just give them a little bit of rest. So we're going to come down, we're going to take one knee, then the other knee into that chest. We're just going to draw them into the chest. Breathe out, my friends. Breathe out. So this is a really nice way of stretching out the glutes, which have been working really hard. Now we're going to take one foot down, and we're just going to draw that knee of the bent leg into the shoulder, into the chest, but then we're going to gently draw it towards the opposite shoulder. And if you can, still keeping both hip bones as close to the mat as you can. So rather than rolling onto your side, breathing out and then bringing it back, we're going to slide this foot back and we're going to draw this one into the same shoulder. And then we're going to draw it just towards the opposite shoulder. And again, just breathing out to allow that relaxation to happen. Lovely. Okay. So if we bring this foot up, we're just going to bring this one down, and all the while just controlling this belt-like muscle. It's in charge of everything. So we're not going to do any sort of jerky movements. Now just bring these arms out to the side, and we've walked the feet together. We've walked the knees together. Now with that head looking directly up towards the ceiling, we're going to tighten the belt. And as you breathe out, you're going to just gently let your knees fall to one side. So if they started at 12 o'clock on that clock face, you're going to let them fall to 1 o'clock. And then you're going to tighten the belt, bring them back to 12. And then you're going to let them fall to 11 o'clock. And as you come back to center, make sure that belt is active. So always tighten that belt. Now you may find the legs can go a little bit further, and you may find you're quite comfortable letting your head turn in the opposite direction. So these are our hip rolls. And I love this. I think I do this every morning. I sort of manage to stumble downstairs, make a cup of whatever is my fancy, and then sort of lie down. To be honest with you, I spend a lot of time just looking at the ceiling. But then we get started. And this is such a nice way just to get loosened up to start the day. If you do find you're a little bit stiff in that back in the mornings, you might want to do it before you get out of bed, particularly if you've got a nice firm mattress. Good. Lovely. Just let those shoulder blades melt into the mat. And remember this muscle here, this belt-like muscle, there's actually a lot of them, but I'm going to just call it the belt. They work together. And they're just controlling that flow, controlling the movement. So let you control this movement, not it control you. Now let's bring those feet back to hip width apart. And we're just going to see if we can again tilt that pelvis. Remember that bucket of water till we find that neutral spine. So there's a slight sort of loosening between your lower back and the mat, but there's not an arch. Now we're going to see if we can breathe in, and as we breathe out, without arching that back, we're going to pull that tummy button towards the spine. We're going to bring this knee above that hip. Now, It's not sort of there or there. Notice we've got that 90-degree angle at the knee, and I'm going to get you to imagine that we've placed a little glass of water on that shin. Now that is our single leg tabletop. So you may want to do this exercise with 2 legs in tabletop, particularly if you've been doing this for a while, but we must make sure that that lower back does not arch away from the mat, okay? So either with 1 leg or both legs in tabletop. I'm going to do it with 1 leg. What we're going to do is hold that 90-degree angle at the knee, and we're just going to allow that toe to come towards the mat and back. So we call this toe dips. So imagine you're lying by the sea and you're just dipping that toe in just to see what the water is like. So we're going to breathe out as we move that leg away from center. So the hardest part of the move is actually here, because this pelvis wants to tilt so this lower back can come away from the floor. So we're going to do 8 on this leg. So almost the slower you move away from center, the harder it is. Okay, the further you take that toe down. So if that's too much, just take it so far. And it looks like this. So we're just doing 8 on the left, then 8 on the right. So this is what it looks like with double leg tabletop. Okay, now we're going to change legs. When we've done 8 on that side, we're going to do 8 on the right leg. So the whole point of this, my friends, is that we're working these muscles here, and we just do not want that back to arch away from the mat. So this is going to give you core strength when you're doing your everyday activities, that you're not going to be using that lower back for everything. It's going to help flatten out those abdominals. Good. And it's going to really support the spine when you're doing your day-to-day activities. Good. So we're breathing out on the hardest part of the move, breathing in as that knee comes back up. We're going to breathe out, and we're going to breathe in. If you find that your hip clicks a little bit, just reduce that range of movement, okay? That's good. And mine does it occasionally, and I have to just reduce the range. Lovely. Now we're going to bring this knee into the chest. We're going to bring the other knee into the chest, and we're going to gently roll like a ball. So we still have that belt active. We still have that belt at notch 3 or 4. And we're just going to gently, gently let that head and neck relax back on the towel. And we're just rolling through that lower back as if you were just rolling a little ball. Okay, so the lower back is the ball. And then we're going to release. Now we're going to just take 1 foot and another foot down. Keep those knees bent. We're going to practice the arm movement now, okay? So we're going to practice just floating those arms up towards the ceiling. I've got my palms facing each other. If you want to make it more challenging for the shoulders, you can turn your palms so they're facing your knees. Okay, now all we're going to do is tighten the belt, and like we did in the warm-up, we're going to take those arm floats. Okay, we're going to breathe out, and we're going to breathe in. So we're looking up towards the ceiling. Good. Now notice what happens as this arm floats overhead. So at this point, everything's fine. Then once it gets to the point where it reaches its shoulders limitations, you'll want to lift the ribs up, and you'll want to arch that back. You're not going to let that happen. So we're going to tighten the belt. Imagine a steel thread between the base of the ribs and the top of the pelvis, and then you're going to bring that arm back to that start position. So you're looking for that point of tension, not pushing beyond, coming back. Now, it's all a test for these abdominals, but you get a nice bit of mobility. So we can make it more challenging by coming into tabletop. Either 1 leg, okay, or with 2 legs. Now, if it gets too much with 2 legs, but you want to try it, just bring those knees a little bit closer. But ideally, we got those knees in line with the hips, and we're just going to breathe out and in. Now, you might even find you can take that scissor switch in midair and push the opposite hand down towards the mat. Good. So we're breathing out, tightening that belt, breathing in. Now, if you want to make it a little bit more challenging, you can take those knees ever so slightly away from you. If you need to make it easier, bring them closer, but by no means let that back arch away from the mat. We're breathing out And we're breathing in. So when you've had enough, guys, just come into that knees into the chest position. And then we're going to bring it in, bring those knees. And again, we're going to roll like a ball. This time, you might decide to just keep a little orange, right? Imagine I put a little orange between your chin and the chest. You may find it comfortable lifting that chest away from the floor and making that movement a little bit bigger. You may not, okay? So I'm not going to go into too much depth with that. And then we're going to bring one foot down, then the other. And we're just going to have a nice big stretch before we move on. So tighten that belt, stretch those arms overhead, stretch out those legs. And then we're going to bend those knees and we're going to bring yourself onto your side. Yes, I'm laughing because I made a little plan, went through it all. Already I've gone off on a tangent from the plan. So I hope you're okay. And it's all about maintaining that alignment in this trunk. So you might want your little towel now, because I'm going to push my arm out there and either just rest my head there or just support it so you've got that comfortable head and neck. Now we are going to today straighten out these legs. So I'm going to show you from this angle what we tend to do. So this is the ideal position, but we tend to sometimes do that, which puts a lot of pressure on the back. So ideally in front or in line with these heels with the tailbone, but not behind. You'll feel it in the lower back if they go behind you. So we're going to start with some leg lifts. And some of you will be leaving that lower leg on the floor. Some of you will be floating it off. So I'm going to show you this start position, which always includes just getting those shoulders relaxed, long spine, okay, neutral spine. So make sure you're not arching that back. Now what we're going to be doing is floating this leg off the floor and back down. So we're going to be using these muscles here, but these core muscles are going to be balancing you. So if you find it almost impossible to stay in that position without support, we can bring this hand here. So the closer it is to the body, the less support. You may need quite a bit of support, but just make sure we're not letting that shoulder pull forward. So slide that shoulder blade down, then bring in that support. Tighten this belt, and imagine I'm trying to post a piece of paper between your waist and the floor. Now, this is our start position. We're just going to gently bring this leg to hip level. You may feel comfortable floating this lower leg up as well. So we're lengthening, shoulder relaxed. If not, leave that foot on the floor. And with that knee facing forwards, we're going to breathe out and we're going to just breathe in. So notice that way back down is smooth and flowing. We're breathing out and in. So you can feel the muscles here. Now, if you don't need support, you can take that hand here. And if you want to float, remember lengthening. Good. So those knees are facing forward, that big toe facing forwards. I mean, you can take it there, but it's working different muscles. Okay. So we're going to aim for somewhere between 8 and 10 of these. If that's too many, you just hold it there and just bring yourself gently back down. Okay. So if you can do it floating, great. Otherwise, leave that leg down. And when we've done our 8 to 10, we're just going to bring it slowly here and relax that leg down. Now we're going to bend at the knees. You can give those muscles a little rub if you need. Just watch out what happens with that lower back as we bend. We tend to arch, so keep zipping up, drawing that belt in. We're going to slide this hand over so the palm is facing up, and now we're going to take our open door. So tighten that belt, open that arm as if it was, I don't know, the sun rising and then the sun setting, breathing in, bringing it back. So you might need to adjust the position of that towel. We're breathing out, just following that hand with the head and breathing in. Good. So we're going to take our awareness not only into that belt, but into these hips. We tend to roll backwards. So imagine I've clamped those hips, or that there's a glass of water resting on the top of that hip. And we're just finding that lovely flow. So we're going to do 4, 5, 6 of these. Breathing out and breathing in. So this is all about chest flexibility. Just stretching out those muscles in the front of the shoulder and the chest. I always think this is the perfect antidote to computer work. So once we come back to center, I'm going to see if we can push ourselves up to a sitting position. And we're going to see if we can sit up nice and tall in a straddle position. So when we talk about sitting nice and tall, quite hard to sit up nice and tall. You may find you're a little bit slumped. So you might want to place that towel underneath those hips, which will just give you a little bit more height and enable you to do that. So let's create that space. Slide those shoulders down away from the ears. Now, either with knees bent, or we can take, I'm going to come back a little bit, that straddle position. Okay, we're going to see if we can just zip up. So we're going to bring in a little bit of pelvic floor here. So we're going to imagine that lift within that pelvic region, and we're just going to draw up gently to the first floor. Now let's see if we can slide the shoulders down, take this prayer position like we did earlier, and we're just going to take a gentle little twist, come back to center. So for those of you that may not feel comfortable with the twist, I know some of us have got bone density issues, we're going to stay quite static and we're just going to open and bring it shut. Okay, so we're going to practice a little bit more chest flexibility and upper back work. Good. But if we're comfortable taking those little twists, we're going to do that now. We're also going to bring into that twist this little bit of chest opening. So we're just going to pull on that right arm, come back to center, pull on that left arm, not overdoing it. Keep those shoulders relaxed. Good. We're going to just do one more either side. And remember, we're just opening, closing those arms if we have that bone density issue. Now we're going to come back to center. Just slide these hands down, bring those feet in, give the feet a little wiggle. There's nothing Pilates-y about that. I just like to do that. And then we're going to change position for that sideways movement, because let's face facts, if I don't do it straight away, I might forget, and you'll have one side stronger than the other. So we're going to stack those hips again, one on top of the other. And we're going to just take that hand. You might want that towel just supporting this head. We're going to make sure, now I'm particularly not as stable on this side. I always think I should show you this side to start with. So I'm going to need a little bit of support with my hand. I'm going to tighten my belt, float that lower leg up to the start position. And if I'm feeling strong enough today, I'm going to float that lower leg. Okay. Just relax that shoulder, that supporting shoulder. We're going to breathe out and we're going to breathe in. Good. So we're aiming for somewhere between about 8 and 10, my friends. And as that leg comes down, keep drawing that tummy button away from the waistband of your trousers. Keep that belt notch 4 in action, or 3. At some points, it sort of needs to be a bit more, and some points you'll find it can be a bit less, but we're looking straight ahead, breathing out, breathing in. Good. Relaxing those shoulders, sliding those shoulder blades down the back, tightening that belt, finding that flow. So imagine you're like a ballet dancer. To all intents and purposes, it looks elegant and graceful, looks easy. No one can see that furious pedaling underneath the water. Good. Lovely. So when we've done our 8 or 10, just going to hold it there, lower the lower leg, lower that top leg, or with control, bend those knees. You can have a little rub there if it needs it. Okay, sometimes I like to bring that foot just gently over so it stretches out a little bit. And then we're just going to come to that 90-degree angle. So remember, think about that neutral spine. We're going to slide that arm down. I've lost my towel there, so I'm just going to roll my mat up to support my head. because we've no longer got that arm. Now tighten that belt again, and we're breathing out. So we're finding that flow. Don't worry if you can't quite follow the hand with the head. So just let that hand make its path. Keep watching it, but don't worry if you can't see it all the way. I sort of lose it about there. It all depends on your neck flexibility. But, you don't have to stop the arm just because the head can't follow. Good. So we're just breathing out. And then we're going to bring it back to center. Okay. So we can just allow that mat just to straighten out. And what we're going to do next is just straighten out those legs and just gradually bring yourself onto your front. So we'll do a little bit of back work now. So we're going to start with the upper back. We're going to do some lower back. The main thing I wanted to think about in this position was that sort of alignment, because once we're on our front we think, oh, that's nice and easy, and you can see it here. I've almost let my back arch quite considerably and my stomach is just falling into the mat. Really, I'm not bracing it. So even in this position, I want us to let that head rest on the mat, hands wherever you feel comfortable, and then let's have a little play with this pelvis. Let's have a little play with that bucket of water. And then when you find that flat level, hold it there and imagine you're lying on a bed of ice. It's freezing cold, and it is absolutely imperative that we keep your belly button away from that ice. So we're drawing up all the time. You can use a bit of pelvic floor or just that belt-like muscle. We're going to make sure that that head feels comfortable. So we might use that towel. And then we're going to relax those arms almost into that W position. So just make sure there's a little bit of space in that armpit. We don't want the arms to the elbows in. We want a little bit of leeway. So it's like a W position. Now, all we're going to do, that bottom is going to be like jelly. We've got that lovely alignment. We're just going to squeeze the shoulder blades together and lift the forearms away from the floor. So as we lift, we're breathing out. And again, somewhere between 8 and 10, but we may find if this is early days of doing this, this is quite challenging for those upper back muscles. So you may want to keep it to 3, 4, or 5 and build up slowly. Okay. Keep tightening that belt. Bottom is totally relaxed. Breathing out. Breathing in. Really feeling those muscles in and around the shoulder blades. Back of the shoulders. And then we're going to relax. Now we're going to work the lower back this time. So we're going to engage the bottom muscles. We're going to slide these hands down the thighs, slide the shoulders away from the ears. And we're going to just imagine that we're lifting that breastbone away from the mat, but we're looking down towards our towel, towards our mat as we lift and lower. So squeeze the bottom. Push those fingertips towards the ankles, lift that chest, draw that tummy button away from the mat. So working those lower back muscles, not overdoing it, particularly if you have any issues with the back. Now, if you want some support, you can take those arms out and just gently, gently use those forearms just to help you lift. Okay. Or we can just rely on the glutes, on those lower back muscles. Lovely. If you want to add a little bit more to it, start with those palms facing up. And as you lift, just rotate those palms so they're facing the thighs and work those shoulders as well. So we can bring in the back of the shoulders. And when we've done our 8 to 10, we're going to relax, and then we're going to just push ourselves up into that cat position, and we're going to just stretch out that back by drawing up to the ceiling, lengthening through those arms, and just stretching out into that flexion. Good. You may want to come into child's pose as well, but you may feel happy just to bring yourself back into that position. Now, we're going to do a little bit of extra work on the lower back and the glutes. I'm just going to move that band out of the way so you can see. I'm going to turn myself round. I'm hoping you can see now. Let's just check. No, you cannot. Okay, so we're going to take those feet a little bit apart, and we're going to just flex those feet. So it doesn't matter if you point the toes, but we're basically going to be squeezing those heels together using the bottom muscles. Now, if you have quite a pronounced curve in your lower back, you may need to get your towel and put it underneath your hip bone, so we're activating these bottom muscles, so we're not sort of arching away from the mat. So you may need a little bit of support under those hips. Otherwise, we're going to take those feet apart, toes turning outwards, and draw that tummy button in. You can take those hands underneath the forehead if you prefer, and we're going to squeeze those heels together and release. Good. Squeeze, slide those heels along the mat, or you'll actually find the heels aren't in contact with the mat most likely, but the toes are. Squeeze, and you can really feel these muscles working, and release. Good. Squeeze and release. We're going to do 4 more. Squeeze and release. Good. Squeeze and release. Good. Can you feel those bottom muscles working? If you can't, try it with that rolled up towel underneath your hip bones. Squeeze and release. Good. Breathing out and breathing in. And then we're just going to bring those feet back and relax there for a moment. Whew. All right. Now, back away from the bottom, away from the bottom, into this upper back. We're going to create now, just almost like that W position, but this time we're going to be letting those arms stay on the floor, and we're just going to gently use these muscles between the shoulder blades to just lift the breastbone ever so slightly, so you could fit a little piece of paper underneath your nose. Now, we're not using the bottom, so make that jelly-like. Find that lovely neutral spine, relax the shoulders, and then when you breathe out, we're just going to very, very, very gently lift that rib cage, just a fraction, and then slowly back down. Breathing out. It's the tiniest movement. Keep drawing those shoulder blades down the back. Let them slide down the back towards the bottom. If this doesn't work to you, go back to that little squeeze. Okay. And release. You might have one more, you might not. And when you've done your 8 to 10, again, we're going to bring ourselves into that 4-point kneeling position. We're just going to draw that spine up towards the ceiling. And then we're just going to walk these hands back towards the knees. Now, some of us may feel like that is enough, and you may be ready to sort of finish up. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in our hip flexor stretch now. So basically, we're going to take one foot and we're going to take that heel in front of you, and we're going to let this chest rest on that thigh. Now, this is the stretch for this front of the upper thigh. It's a hip flexor stretch. So just make sure we don't arch your back again. And if we can increase the stretch, what we're going to do is gently lift this chest, okay? Push this hip gently forwards. I'm going to lift that chest. Now, if you can let go of that thigh, you're going to imagine you've got that beach ball I gave you earlier, and we're just going to put it to one side over that bent leg. Okay, so now we're going to come back to center and relax that chest down. Slide that foot backwards. We're going to do the same on the other side. So we're just going to let this chest rest on that thigh. Relax the shoulders, and only if you feel comfortable are we going to lift the chest. Gradually bring that chest up. Hold onto that beach ball and gently put that beach ball to one side. Good. Bring it back and down. And then we're just going to slide these feet in. So if that is your lot, my friends, that's the end of our first section. We've done everything. Okay, so you can just tuck those toes under, gently bring yourself up to a standing position. Maybe just move the feet a little bit to make sure you don't get dizzy. For those of you that are carrying on, well done. But well done if you decide to finish as well. What we're going to do now is come onto our backs again. So we're just going to bring ourselves here, and we're going to make that little pelvic tilt, and we're just going to gently feed ourselves down onto the mat. Now, ta-da! We're going to bring this in, but I'm going to just do some knee circles before we bring the band in. So we really want to find that neutral spine. Okay, find that neutral spine. So there's little pelvic tilts, and then we're going to relax the shoulders, tighten that belt. So what we're going to do is come back to that tabletop position. Remember that one? So the glass of water is on the shin, the knee is above the hip. Now, remember, sometimes we put a spirit level across our hip bones. So we're going to do that now, and we're going to make sure that red dot is in the middle. Once it's there, we're going to put a pencil in our knee, and we're going to see if we can draw 5 circles with that pencil, and the only thing that's moving is this leg. So this supporting leg isn't following. So imagine I put a glass of water on top of that knee, and we're going to draw 5 circles clockwise and 5 circles anti-clockwise. This is more challenging than it looks. Well, I think it is anyway. When you've done 5 clockwise, we're going to go 5 anti-clockwise. And what you'll find is that opposite knee wants to mimic what this knee is doing. So nice and slow and controlled. It doesn't have to be big, no more than sort of 12 inches, and it can be smaller in diameter if you prefer. Okay, but we're keeping that neutral spine. Lovely. And when we've done it with that leg, we're going to do it with this leg. Relax those shoulders, guys. You may want to just loosen up that lower back between each one, okay? So again, now if you want to make it more challenging again, you can straighten out that. I'm not sure if that's more challenging or less challenging, to be honest with you, because I find this knee wants to do this as well. So I'm going to keep it here, and it also helps, it does help maintain the neutral spine though. Okay, so we're going to do 5 one way, and then we're going to do 5 the other way. Now take your awareness into your shoulders, my friends. My shoulders are sort of in this position because I find this really challenging. So try and relax the shoulders. Take the tension here rather than in those shoulders. And then we're going to come back to center. Bring this knee into the chest and bring this in. So again, we can roll like the ball a little bit, okay? Or we can just relax. Now we're just going to come away from that exercise for one moment. Just give those hips a little chance to recover before we go into the full leg. So we're going to bring ourselves up to a seated position. And I'm going to just show you, in this, we can take this straddle position. Okay, so we're sitting nice and tall. Remember, you might need that chair. We're going to come into our mermaid stretch. Or you may feel comfortable taking what we call a Z sit. So this foot is flexed, and we're sort of just taking that sideways position, but we want to make sure we're sitting nice and tall, not sort of slumped. And then we're going to do 3 mermaids that way, 3 this way. Okay, but we can do it in this position. So I'm going to start it off in this straddle position, shoulders relax. I'm going to soften this elbow. I'm going to breathe out. I'm going to breathe in, shoulders relaxed. I'm going to breathe out and I tighten that belt. I'm going to breathe in. So we're really getting some nice stretch throughout that back that we were working earlier. Good. And keep tightening that belt. Just let that elbow soften. Relax those shoulders. Good. Breathing out and breathing in. So if you're doing the Z sit, we're going to change the position of the knees now, and we're going to do 3. So if you're in this position for that, you want to just change to this position. And if you're in the straddle, we'll do 3 more either side. Okay, and this is how it looks. So just relaxing that shoulder. I bent that elbow then a bit too much. Breathing out, breathing in. Good. Breathing out, breathing in. Keep tightening that belt. And then we're going to release. So it's all about balance. So if we do it with the knees one way, we must do it with the knees the other way. Okay, so you enjoying this, Sam? We're going to just tilt that pelvis again, roll that spine down into the mat. And we're going to this time, I'm going to get my towel underneath my head. I forgot it last time. So this time we're going to take the flat of the band. I better just, yes, I'm keeping you again, aren't I? But this is really lovely for hip mobility. So what we're going to do is just take the foot into the band. We're going to straighten out that leg. Now what we're going to just try and do is flex and point for a moment. Just flex and point. And then we're going to see if we can do this. I'm going to try and do it with my foot pointed, but if you prefer it flexed, it's fine. What we're going to do, like we did before with the knee circles, we're going to try and draw some circles. Okay, clockwise and anti-clockwise. Now again, we've got that spirit level over the hip bones. A little bit more challenging for balance here. We're going to keep the hip bones in your back, so the back of your pelvis need to stay in contact with the mat, shoulders relaxed. So tighten that belt, we're breathing out and we're breathing in. So I've had a bit of an injury recently. I'm slowly getting there, but I'm keeping my range deliberately small. Good. So I'm not pushing into pain. So there shouldn't be pain. You might notice stretch, but there shouldn't be pain. Good. So this is great for mobilizing the hips with control. I'm going to change direction now, but it's also really good for back of the leg flexibility and for that core stability. So we're having to stabilize the trunk to stop you from rolling side to side. Okay, so when we've done that, we're just going to flex the foot and we're going to take your opposite hand out and we're just going to allow this leg to gently fall out to the side. So we're getting a bit of a stretch for the inner thigh here, my friend. So breathe out. Just going to hold it there. And again, it's to your point of tension. Then we're going to use that band to help pull that leg gently back. We're going to let this leg gently fall across the body. We're going to breathe out. Feel that gentle stretch across the side of the leg. And then when you feel ready, we're going to bring it back and we're going to change legs. How are we doing there, friends? How are we doing? So again, you can have it here. And I do like I think I get quite tight in the calf muscles. So that flex gives you a lovely little stretch there, but it's also really nice for ankle strength and mobility. So with that leg as straight as you can, but don't worry if you need to have a little bend. Okay, we'll just work on that. We're going to just keep those shoulders nice and relaxed and use that band to help us. Now, I know some of you are probably doing this as we speak without the band. That's okay. You don't have to have a band. And you can use a towel instead of the band. I sort of specifically like it for me. It's just what I need. And you tend to get what I like. So remember that spirit level over the hip bones. Remember that belt. Breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in. Good. And then we're going to hold it there when you've done your 5 each way. And again, I mean, it doesn't have to be the opposite arm. I just like it for balance. Okay. So we're just going to let that. And there you see. Apologies for the bottom of my foot there. I'll try and point my toe a bit, shall I? No, I'm going to flex my foot. And then we're going to bring it back up. Good thing we hoovered the floor. Lovely. And breathing out. So just try and keep, it may not be directly in contact, but as close to, if that makes sense. Otherwise, we're sort of getting the rotation here rather than the stretch down the side of the leg. Good. And then bring it back to center. We're going to bend that knee. Now, if you find it quite hard sitting up from a sitting position, you can sort of push your foot into the band and it can help bring you up. So if you've got a band and you'd like to, we're going to do one more little thing, okay? But I've put both feet into this band now. And I'm going to just see if I can hold onto the band. It's nice and secure. It's going to be able to hold my weight, okay? So we're going to see if we can take that roll down, okay? Or roll up, it really is called. But I'm going to call it the roll down. Because what we're looking for now is that C curve, so that pelvic tilt, draw the tummy button in. And then we're just going to see if we can gently feed that spine, starting at the bottom, one little segment at a time down into the mat. So it's all about the abdominal muscles. Good. So these abdominal muscles are just having to control this movement down. You've got that little orange between the chin and the chest. Now, if you find that very difficult, you can use that band around your feet. Just make sure it's secure. Take that C curve and you can just practice what that feels like with a little bit of support. It helps create that smoothness. Okay. I wouldn't be tempted to go all the way down until you've done this a few times, okay? So you can use that band. Now, if you're coming all the way down, okay, you may find you can come up. So we're just going to draw that tummy button in. The arms come overhead only as far as you feel comfortable. Now, with that orange between your chin and your chest, you're going to peel that spine away from the mat. Good. We're just going to do a couple of those. Then we're just going to allow that chest to rest over the thighs. Good. And then when you feel comfortable, we're going to straighten out these legs, draw that tummy button in with that beach ball, just place it onto the thighs, lift that chest over that beach ball, then push that imaginary tail down into the mat, lengthen up. So we're going to do 3 of these. We're just going to breathe out. And as you come back, just relax the shoulders. Create that space between the base of the ribs and the pelvis. Breathe out. And then we're going to come up. Lovely. Okay, my friends, we're going to bend these knees. We're going to bring yourself onto your side. And then we're going to think about actually coming into our standing position. So we're going to come into that hands and knees position. We're going to take a cat stretch, just have a nice little stretch. And then we're going to tuck those toes under, walk those hands towards the feet. And when you feel ready, we're going to just see if we can straighten out those legs. Let those head become floppy, hands become floppy. We're going to push those heels down into the floor. We're going to roll up through that spine. Okay, so I'm going to come all the way up so you can just see my legs. And when we're in that standing position, just wiggle those toes a little bit. I'll bring you back to a sensible position. Good. Okay, I'm actually really heartened to see that not everyone stayed for the second part, because it's
It's sometimes just about knowing what's going to work for you. And I think it's really worth building those core muscles, building that strength and flexibility before we go too far. But I know Rosie and Simone and Bianca, and I know we've got people who've been doing this for a long time. So I wanted to make sure we had a bit more there. So we're just going to see if we can take a nice breath in. We're going to breathe out. And we're going to breathe in. And we're going to breathe out. And then we're going to just see if we can walk one hand over that shoulder. We're going to take a little stretch of the shoulders. We're going to gradually bring in a little bit more work for the shoulders, a bit more kneeling position, just to see if we can strengthen these arms without going over the top, if that makes sense. So we're going to bring these tricep stretches in. And like everything, if anything doesn't suit, we can just leave it out and wait until the next exercise comes. Just take that little roll of the shoulders. We're going to look towards one shoulder. We're going to take the hand and very, very gently come into this neck stretch. We're going to draw that hand so you're just gently looking towards the hip. Gently, gently release. Look towards that other shoulder. And again, nice and easy does it. We're looking towards that hip. And then we're going to release. Take a breath in, breath out. And breath out. We're going to take one more breath in. And good. Oh, have a little wiggle. Wiggle the toes. Just shake those arms out a little bit. Thank you, my friends. I have to say, I feel a lot better for that session. I was up here about an hour beforehand, just couldn't wait to start really, but I didn't want to do too much because then I think, oh, I'm not really, I wanted to feel it as I go with you. So I hope everything was good. I am hoping that the internet didn't mess around with you today. I've tried something a little bit different, so fingers crossed. I'm also going to be recording some the ABCs. You know, in the warm-up we do a lot on alignment and breathing and centering. So I'm going to record little segments for people who are coming for the first time. And that maybe will help us create a slightly less long session. But otherwise, diolch yn fawr. I'm sorry about my pronunciation, but I'm going to keep trying. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you. Thank you too. Mwah. See you next week. Goodbye.